Have you ever wondered where our modern globalized world really comes from? I mean, the blueprint for it? Well, it wasn't designed in Silicon Valley. It was forged thousands of years ago out of something much, much simpler. Today, we're going to dive in and see exactly how the ancient economy was born, how tiny villages grew into massive towns, and how they built a world that was way more connected than you might think.
Our story really begins right here, with people. This line from an ancient poem, it just paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it? You can practically see them, merchants packing up their carts with rice, heading out on a long trip to trade for something as basic as salt. And when they leave, the city feels empty. This isn't just about business, it's the very heartbeat of life back then, a world that was always on the move.
But, a simple scene like that brings up a huge question. How did you get from these individual merchants making these long treks to vast networks that crisscrossed entire continents? What was the spark that turned a world of scattered villages into these buzzing centers of trade and culture?
Well, the answer starts with a revolution, but not one fought with swords and shields. Nope, this one was all about tools. It was a single technological jump that would completely change society right from the ground up.
That's it, iron. Just think about the difference for a second. For ages, farmers were stuck with wooden plows that could barely scratch the surface of the soil. But suddenly they have iron axes that can clear thick forests, and crucially, iron plowshares that could dig deep into the earth. They unlocked all this new, fertile land. This wasn't just a small improvement. This was a total game changer.
And here's where things get really smart. All this extra food, this surplus, didn't just sit in a barn. It became the fuel for this amazing cycle of growth. See, kings could now tax the farmers on their extra crops. And with that money, they'd fund huge irrigation projects, canals, wells, you name it. More water meant even more food, which meant more surplus, which, you guessed it, meant more taxes for more projects. It was this incredible self-powering engine for building kingdoms.
So all this extra food had a massive, world-altering side effect. For the very first time in history, not everybody had to be a farmer. And that one simple fact led to one of our greatest inventions ever, the city.
And we're not talking about just overgrown villages. These were vibrant, complex places with their own economies and cultures. To really get a feel for how these ancient cities ticked, let's zoom in on a fantastic example, the incredible city of Mathura.
Mathura wasn't just a city. It was the crossroads of civilization. Politically, it was a powerhouse, the second capital of the Kushan Empire. Spiritually, absolutely. It was a sacred hub for Buddhists, Jainas, and followers of Krishna. And culturally, it was just pumping out some of the most beautiful art and sculpture of the time. This is what made these ancient cities so magnetic. They were these super concentrated points of power, faith, and creativity.
So who were the people actually walking these streets and making it all happen? Well, inscriptions found right in Mathura give us this incredible personal look. They tell us about the goldsmiths, the blacksmiths, the weavers, even the people making perfume. The really important thing to get here is that the food surplus freed up all these people to become masters of a craft. It created this diverse, specialized urban economy that just wasn't possible before.
Okay, so you've got all these amazing goods being made by all these different craftspeople, but trying to barter, say, a basket for a bit of perfume? Well, that's just not going to work anymore. It's too slow, too complicated. You need a better, more flexible way to exchange things. You need money.
And boom, enter the punch-marked coin. Now before this, trade was clumsy. It was like trying to pay for something with a cow. You can't exactly get change from a cow, right? These little stamped pieces of metal were a revolutionary piece of tech. They created a universal language of value that made buying and selling things faster, easier, and possible over mind-boggling distances.
So, we've got the ingredients, right? Surplus goods, specialized crafts, and a reliable currency. The stage was now set for trade to just explode. But how far did these ancient trade networks actually go? The answer is probably a lot farther than you'd think.
Just take a look at this map. And don't just see lines. Try to picture the people who traveled these routes. Imagine merchants leading camel caravans through deserts, or sailors using the stars to navigate dangerous seas, all for profit and adventure. And right at the center of a big piece of it, the Kushana rulers controlled a massive section of the Silk Route, and they became immensely wealthy from all the trade that flowed between east and west.
Seeing the big map is one thing, but to really feel the pulse of this global trade, let's zoom in, way in. We're going to look at one single spot, a coastal settlement in South India called Arakamedu. What archaeologists found there is basically a time capsule.
The stuff they dug up here tells this unbelievable story of connection. On one side, you've got things that came from halfway around the world. Roman jars that once held wine or oil, fancy stamped pottery called aratenware, even Roman glass. But what's maybe even cooler is that the local potters were clearly looking at this stuff and getting inspired, because they started making their own pottery using Roman designs. This wasn't just a one-way shipment of goods. It was a conversation between cultures.
And another ancient poem, this one about the port of Puhar, paints an even crazier picture. It talks about fast horses arriving by ship, carts loaded with black pepper, gems and gold from the Himalayas, pearls from the southern seas. It honestly sounds like a list of the most valuable treasures in the world, all flowing into this one single bustling port.
So all of this leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We think of our time, right now, as the age of globalization. But 2,000 years ago, someone in Rome could be drinking from a cup that was inspired by a design from a workshop in South India, a port that was also trading in Himalayan gems and Chinese silk. It really makes you wonder, is our connected world really a new thing, or are we just living out the latest chapter in a very, very old story?